Ladies and gentlemen of the Red Special Guitar Podcast, today we are lucky to have Mr. Dan Thomas with us of TikTok fame.
Thank you very much, sir.
How are you?
Good to see you again. I'm really well. Yeah.
Good. I know, Dan, it's been a long time since we've agreed to do this. We finally managed to get it together where we're both in the same room, which hopefully everyone watching and listening will hear and see the benefits of.
It will. We've talked about this one for a while. And I like to think it's because, you're saving the best till last. But I think you've been able to get some higher profile guests in a little bit sooner than me, and that's fine. I don't.
Yeah, maybe. We'll see. No. But so for those of you that don't know, Dan is also one of my helpers for the Red Special Guitar Meetup each year. So Dan forms part of the committee that helps drive the direction of the meetup each year. So when we've made changes and improvements, Dan has been one of the 5 or 6 people behind the scenes that nobody really gets to know of unless you come, that helps out. So he gets mentioned a few times on the day in jest and sensibly. But
that's right.
Dan helps make it all happen too. So we need to say thank you to Dan for that.
Thank you for continuing to put them together. The Red Special Meetup it's a special thing, isn't it? If you'll pardon the pun.
It's also red.
yeah, and a meetup.
Yeah.
And the fact that we get to all meet and sort of talk about a very specific thing once a year is a very cool thing indeed. Much appreciated.
Yeah, no, well, without people like yourself helping and offering and volunteering your time to help with putting it on, because obviously it means that if Dan is there helping, he's not just enjoying the day, he also has some responsibilities to help make sure that the day goes well. So it's a sacrifice in some way of your own time to make sure that everyone else has a great time.
Yeah, but none of us more than you in terms of sacrificing our own time, I think. But it's nice for you to say. Thank you.
Well, I'd just like to commend people for the help. But Dan, we're not here to talk about the Red Special Guitar Meetup as such. We're here to talk about you and your journey with the Red Special. So what I generally like to do is cast your mind back, input dreamy Dan sequence of looking up into the sky. Can you remember when you first heard a Queen song?
I can, very specifically. I know where I was and sort of roughly when it was. This would have been early 90s, very early 90s. And I went on a caravan park holiday with a friend of mine who lived down the road from me. So, the sort of the static caravan parks.
Yeah.
It's like a caravan on bricks. And the whole drive there, they were playing a tape through the car stereo, which I now, having sort of remembered which songs were on it, I'm pretty sure was Queen's Greatest Hits 1. And I'd never heard of Queen in my life before, I don't think. And we listened to this tape all the way there and back, and there was all these weird songs, and they all sounded really floaty, like Bohemian Rhapsody to me sounded like a floaty song. And I guess that was my way of understanding harmonies and all that sort of thing. And, I sort of remembered there was a song about a bike on there, and there was a song about We Are the Champions and all these kinds of things. And my friend sort of introduced me to all of these, and I thought, this music sounds like really interesting. And it all sounds like really floaty and sort of, it was like I was probably like under 10 at the time, but I recognised there was something quite different about the music then. And the guitar itself came to my knowledge, I think in sort of interviews, like especially in the 90s, Brian would give interviews about Queen or guitars, or perhaps he would get written about. And there were certain just facts about him that would always get said. One was he made his guitar out of a fireplace. The other was, he plays with a coin rather than So when I got my first guitar, which I think is in this room somewhere, it was the first thing I did was try and play it with a 2p coin, which is the closest thing. I thought, I haven't got a 6p coin, so I've got to pick the closest thing I have to 2p, and it sounded absolutely dreadful. But so this thing sort of kept coming up in my life, and I remember watching the Bohemian Rhapsody solo, Bohemian Rhapsody video being played on TV, and that was the realization. I was like, oh, all the high notes must be down this part of the guitar, which sounds obvious to us now. But, for all I knew, they could have been up here.
Yeah.
And sort of really thinking about that and really thinking, I don't really know much about guitar players, but this one guy really sort of seems to stick out to me. And then, as I got older, I was in university and I was working in a nightclub, like a cheesy, sticky floored nightclub, people blowing cigarettes, smoking your face all day. And they used to have these music videos up on the TV. And again, like I could really just night after night after night just watch that this guy who I now obviously knew was Brian May was playing this very red, almost like cherry coloured, as it looked to me at the time, guitar. And I just used to stare up at it thinking, God, imagine what it'd be like to just sort of play one of those for a minute. It'll obviously never happen, but what if it did? And so there was a good sort of gestation period of, like 10 or so years where I was just really thinking about it and really noticing that there was something specific about this guitar player and this guitar that I thought was different. Yeah. And that suddenly, it got me into playing guitar in a way. I think there's like 3 influences. One was probably him. One was probably seeing Johnny B. Good in Back to the Future. And one would be like another sort of guitar hero, and all those 3 things sort of came together, especially around the Red Special.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting because most of the people I talk to have a very similar story, whether it's they're on a journey or something big's happening in their lives, or they're doing something they very much remember. Queen comes on and it sows that seed. And I'm guessing at that point you probably thought you were the only person interested in this.
100%. Yeah. Because I remember having conversations with people even in like the early 2000s and just going, there's this specific guitar that's kind of cool, and there's the way that this guy plays guitar, which is kind of different. He has a certain type of intent in his playing, which really comes across. But I think I'm the only person in the world that's really noticed this, so it's just going to remain in my head. And obviously, years later, we found out there's a load of us social outcasts that all had the same feeling. But I thought it was just me that sort of picked up. It was almost like in my head it was a 1-person fan club, because I wasn't aware that there were all these thousands of other people in the world that were sort of having the same feeling, and going back a lot longer than I had been as well.
But it's just interesting because I think lots of us are of a similar age in the community, and we've all sort of around similar times heard the songs in isolation to each other, and then gone, oh, that's interesting. It's planted a seed, and then that's been watered and grown over time. And would you say it was the Red Special that made you, and Brian May, that made you pick the guitar up? Or
it's definitely like a good half of it, a good half to a third. Yeah, it was just seeing that. It was the Bohemian Rhapsody solo, and perhaps even things like Killer Queen on telly from time to time. And you wouldn't see them all the time. And obviously this was way pre-internet streaming, so you couldn't just choose to watch a video when you felt like it. And I wouldn't have been aware of the greatest hits VHSs and all that kind of stuff. So, but whenever you did happen to see one, when you were sat in front of the telly, I'd see it, and I'd see how really wrenching these kind of high notes out of the guitar. And, you could just tell that there was something different going on there. And, it was when I first started to form the idea of emotion and intent in guitar playing, I guess, as opposed to it just, previous to that, I'd learned to play keyboard, and you can't really play a keyboard key in a particular way, in a particular accent, but you can on guitar. Yeah. You can hear people's, in the same way as you can hear my voice talking, you can sort of know who's playing, and that's one of the big draws to it, I think.
And so, what was your first guitar?
Well,
Ooh.
So
there we go.
So my first guitar was this one that I bought secondhand for £10, and I learnt to play almost everything that I learnt to play in the first year on this, and I didn't know anything. It took a year until someone told me that that's a classical guitar.
Yeah.
And now that's very obvious to me now, but at the time I was like, it's a wooden guitar, therefore it's an acoustic, and it is in a way. I went to uni and was still learning to play on this. It doesn't have any fret dots or anything. Classical guitars don't, but I wasn't really to know that. I put steel strings on it, which is why the neck isn't kind of like banana shaped now.
Gives too much tension.
Yeah, and it's still got the same strings I put on it in uni, I think. And so I sort of arrived at uni having been playing for maybe about 6 months by this point.
Yeah.
And I think when you've been playing for 6 months, your rate of ascent is pretty steep. You know, every week you're making a massive difference. But I think you also overestimate your abilities. So I kind of got to a point where I was 6 months in thinking, I can pretty much do whatever I want now. And now looking back, that was completely false. But I just couldn't hear how bad I was. But I did have an awful lot of enthusiasm. And weirdly, what stuck out to me learning to play this thing was just, I mean, I had no money and I grew up in the middle of nowhere. And so in those few months before uni, with no money and being in the middle of nowhere, I just sat in and played that thing for about 12 hours a day. You know, which was great, but I couldn't tell anyone how to will themselves to get into something that much. Yeah. And if someone had tried to teach me guitar, I don't think I would have still been doing it now. But something just kind of grabbed me, as if it was speaking my language way back then. And just made me want to do it for hours and hours a day, even though I was rubbish and I was making an awful lot of mistakes, and you know, and there wasn't really internet tuition and tabs and things like that there is now. But you know, it just really kind of grabbed me and just really pulled me through the next few years.
It's really interesting because two things. One, it sounds like you started actually playing guitar later on in life, so not like at 10. It was when you went to uni, so 17, 18.
Yeah, it was about 17, yeah.
Which is really similar to when I started trying to play guitar properly. And also the other really interesting thing looking at your first guitar is exactly the same guitar as my sister had, which was the one I first started to pick up.
Right.
Is that
it's
guitar?
Like that.
Yeah, it's like literally has the same rosette around the...
Yeah.
It's the same guitar.
Wow.
So it must be like a Spanish student guitar.
Well, it says BM España, made in Spain, so I think it's from Spain. But,
So yeah, it's quite funny when you picked it up. It's like, it's my sister's guitar, but it's not. It's yours. So our journeys are a lot more similar than we thought.
Yeah.
Which is it's pretty cool. So you go to uni with your acoustic, and then I'm guessing your eyes become slightly more open to the possibilities of electric guitars.
Yeah, they did, and I mean, so around sort of 6 to 9 months into playing. I was still loving it, but you know, I mean, I was trying to play electric songs on that, you know, power chords and solos and everything, and obviously there's only so far you can go. And so it was at that point that I was like, okay, the next time I get a student loan, which back then I think was £4,000 a year, I was like, okay, I'm going to go out and get a guitar actually not modelled after Brian May, but after one of my other idols, who is James Dean Bradfield of Manic Street Preachers. And he was famous, and still is, for playing a white Les Paul custom. Couldn't get anywhere near that with student loan money. But I did manage to find a white Epiphone Les Paul that wasn't like a custom, but it was, it was white. Which, you don't have quite such a discerning eye back in that stage of your guitar playing career. So sometimes if it's the right colour, I mean, if someone had handed me a white, I was looking at white Telecasters at the time thinking that's close enough, you know. So to me, this was all the way. And that was this one. And actually, weirdly, this is an incredibly good sounding Les Paul. It's one of those guitars that's kind of a little bit broken, a little bit loose, and you know, if you're the player that plays it all the time, you get to know its brokenness, and you get to work out ways to play around it. It later sort of transpired with this one that I think this is actually one of the first Epiphone Les Pauls ever made. They're incredibly common now, but they started making them in 1988, and this is from July 88, and I've seen a few 89s, I've seen a few August 88s, but this is actually the oldest one I've ever seen. So it has a few sort of idiosyncrasies and things. I know this isn't the Les Paul podcast, but it has some things which Epiphones wouldn't have. They've only just started doing it now, weirdly, in 2024, but like the sort of square Gibson style. Yeah. Gibson style headstock and sort of various different hardware things and stuff like that. And it's also got like a thin body, and so you know, I emulated my other idol, James Dean Bradfield. I managed to actually get him to sign it because I met him at a TV show. That's
pretty cool.
You know, that sort of saw me through because I could play electric. I got to the end. I needed an amp, of course, so I got to the end of a term. And I was like, I've got 50 quid left. I can either eat or buy an amp, so I bought an amp. And I played it through that, and it was a little Marshall Park thing, and that actually sounded quite cool. And now I could also play sort of, you know, pseudo acoustic on that if I wanted to as well, and it sounded nicer than the other thing. Yeah, and so those two kind of got me through the first few years, you know. Then bought a slightly nicer acoustic to replace that one, which I've still got. And it was a really long while, until I could get anything remotely like a Red Special.
And just to go back through that, obviously at the time, I'm guessing when you were 17, 18, going to university, based it around the time that the internet was probably just starting to become interesting. Or
kind of becoming in every home as opposed to just nerds' homes.
Yeah, but there wasn't the information. YouTube wasn't a thing. There wasn't pictures of guitars and stuff. You'd be looking in Guitarist trying to see what people were playing, or looking at pops and going,
or to even get a tab that you could sort of reasonably rely on.
Yeah,
you know,
it's pretty difficult, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it is a really interesting time to be learning stuff. Where you look at it today, and it's no slight on any youngster that's picking the guitar up today. I think it's absolutely fantastic that they have the option of seeing what guitars people play, rig rundown videos.
Watching someone play it in 4K, showing where their fingers are,
slowing it down. I think the access is absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah. I mean,
and you don't want to take that away from anyone, because it's not their fault. They're born now, not 20 years ago, 30, 40 years ago. But at that point, when you were on your journey, there just wasn't the information out there.
No, there was very rough text tabs, so ASCII tabs, that were made in Notepad. And, they would have some very, dodgy... There was some really, bad mistakes I picked up from those, because, what was in the tab became gospel.
Yeah.
And, you didn't have the ear to hear differently.
Yeah.
So sometimes majors would be minors, and sometimes a 12th fret would become a 13th or whatever. And... that was kind of us. But then the generation before that would say, well, hold on, we had to play vinyl records and stick coins on them to slow them down, and then have to change the pitch and everything else. And that's how we learnt. So, I think comparatively to what came before, we still had it reasonably lucky. But it was kind of in a sweet spot where you sort of had to drag yourself up a little bit too. And I think now, I don't know what it's like in terms of people getting into guitar now. I don't know if it's a bit sort of out of fashion, a bit not in vogue, but it was an interesting time to get into it. And personally, at a time in my life when I had nothing else on, I had no money, and what really attracted me was not only the fact that it was fun and it sounded great, but kind of once you'd invested in it. I mean, well, I suppose we might ourselves disagree, but once you'd bought something, you didn't have to buy anything more. Now, you end up finding things, don't you? But you know what I mean. Once you bought one guitar in one hand, the strings,
you're okay, roughly.
You could stop there if you really wanted to, and
you
get
probably
better.
should, but
Yeah.
So, where were you when you actually? So going back through that, when did you learn Brian made his own guitar with his father?
That used to come out of the just regular interviews or write-ups about him. I think there was just a stock series of kind of Brian May factoids that every journalist would write in, and they would say about the sixpence. They'd say about it being made out of a bit of fireplace. They'd also use a phrase in there like this. Occasionally, one of those interviews would say that the strings balanced on a knife edge, and I took that to mean a literal knife inside the guitar. Like the blade somehow upturned and the strings were passing over it, and it took me a while to work out that was, metaphorical rather than literal. But all the stuff about him making it with his dad would end up in those stories, and it was true. But it did sort of help cement the legend in my head a little bit.
Yeah, and then. What point did you decide to have a look on the internet and try and find? Did you try to find a forum or an information, or did you just Googling around it and
weirdly
across it?
I was someone that was really obsessed with forums for a long time, but I think I actually in my head dismissed the idea that such a forum would exist. To me, it just felt so niche as to not. So I know that I was around and using the internet at the time that people were using. Was it Brian May World and Brian May Central and things like that, that I can't chime in with reminiscences about because I didn't go looking for it. What I used to do instead was part of me working in the cheesy sticky floored nightclub was that you'd get tribute bands coming in.
Right.
And they so a tribute to Robbie Williams, a tribute to whoever. And we used to have one coming in, I can't remember what their name was now. It was some sort of tribute to Queen, one of many. Obviously I'd get chatting to Brian, and I'd always think he'd be some guy that was really enthusiastic and into guitars. It'd always be some miserable old bloke with a wig on. But But then I'd get chatting to them about it, and I remember one of them said, "Well, actually, there's 2 guitars you can buy. There's this new Burns thing, and he said there's also this really old thing called a Guild, and the differences between it are this." And he's trying to explain to me the difference between the tremolo on one and the other, and I just didn't have the frame of reference. I couldn't really understand what he was trying to tell me. Now I get it, many years later. But so I actually used to sort of ask people, and then it was more a case of just, was it around 2000, 2001, the Burns copies came out?
Yep.
And I just went and, was living in Wales at the time, went to the music shop in Newtown, I think, and went and tried one in there. And, both me and the store hands were looking at this thing that had like 6 switches and 2 knobs on it and going, I don't know, like, touch the tremolo bar and just go like this and swing and then fall off. And we were all just sat there completely dumbfounded because no one knew what to do with them. But weirdly, much as I always liked the aesthetics of the Red Special, I always thought that Brian's sound came from what he was thinking at the time or intending at the time more than, the capacitor in the treble, all that sort of thing. I'm sure we'll get onto that. But, and I still kind of think that to a degree.
I would generally agree with you. My experience has taught me that the sound really comes from the individual. And
it's one of those things that's almost as true as it is untrue, isn't it? Yeah. Because we can think of examples where, oh yes, the pickups on, and I've gone through a thing with my guitars where I've been like, oh, other people's sound different. And then we've had other situations where they just completely blow all of that out of the water and, the bottleneck becomes the person.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's lots of things as well, and what's really difficult is to try and gauge what that bass is you're basing it from. Is it a recorded sound or is it a live sound? And then if you're going off an album and it's a recorded sound, then it's had loads of processing going through it. It's different mic placements, mics from the 70s, 80s, different sound engineers, different control boards, different mixing, post-mixing, putting it onto. So you kind of have to decide what your frame of reference is.
It's true, but I mean, if I may pick this up for a second, it's not plugged in. But
what is it, Dan? I've not seen one of those before.
I'm about to knock it over. This is my Red Special. But the thing that struck me immediately when I got any sort of ear for what he was doing, on a really basic level, I was just like, okay, well, every time a normal guitar player plays a note, it's like this. And the way he's doing it, he's doing this, he sort of does this rake thing where he goes, And I thought, well, that's intent. Like he's intending it to sound in a certain kind of squeezed, forced, do you know what I mean? In aggressive fashion. And that's because of what he's thinking at the time, and that thought, that subconscious thought, kind of transfers into what you do with your fingers. And that to me has always been a huge part of his sound. And I always thought, so I didn't really spend the early years concentrating on getting, the right pickups and the treble booster and all that sort of thing. I was thinking, okay, I need an electric guitar, I need an amp that's sort of reasonably distorted, and I'm just going to sort of will the rest to happen. And, with sort of mixed success, I guess.
I think it's really interesting listening to you talk about his attack and style, because I think that's certainly, those are the things when I think about it, when you're talking about it, that made me gravitate towards it as well, was it wasn't just someone playing a note, it was a note with forethought or with aggression, as you would say, but and the pre-bending and how he goes about his thought process and the things that he did just really stood out to me as not done by anyone else and very unique to him. And I think we've all of us in this crazy world have attempted to try and sound as close to him as we can do at some point. And it's not very easy.
It's not very easy. No, it's tricky, isn't it? Well, it depending on what you're trying to do at the time, it's either easy or impossible. And, people's personal tone can transcend all kit. Some kit can kind of get you 3/4 of the way there. It's a real tricky, there's a paradox, isn't there? That, everyone both sounds the same and completely different. At the same time. Or, we've been in situations where different guitars, including even things that aren't Red Specials, sound the same, and yet we've sort of perceived small differences ourselves when we're playing. So it's a very paradoxical world, the world of guitar. That's probably kind of part of its mystique, I suppose. Yeah,
and I think there's an element of, I think you maybe agree, that less around, it's definitely about how it sounds, but more so with Red Specials, I think it's how you feel when you're playing it. And if you feel like you're set up playing it properly and you've got the same things as Brian and you're doing the same things and it sounds like you're doing the same things to yourself.
Yes.
Whereas if you don't feel like you've got the right stuff in the right place,
Yes.
even though everyone else might say, "Oh, you sound like,"
You sound great. Yeah.
you still don't feel like you do.
Yeah, I mean, that was always the big criticism that people used to have about sort of modelling amps and things, wasn't it? Was that it kind of sounded okay to the audience, but to the person, it didn't have the throat or that sort of, that weird kind of motorbike tone that you get when you're playing a loud guitar that's feeding back and everything. I think nowadays, I think they're actually a bit smarter than that, aren't they? But that sense that you are directly controlling the movement of air and that sort of MIDI, chesty kind of throatiness. I mean, if there's a guitar in the world that does that really, really well, it's the Red Special.
Oh,
Probably more so than the Les Paul, which is really famously known for being able to do that. That combination, when you get it at its best, it's just in a way it's very specifically Brian. In another way, it almost sounds like the quintessentially stereotypical rock guitar.
Yeah,
but it's actually only one specific combination that sounds that way.
It's such an interesting, like, crazy topic, really, when you start dissecting it down into the small minutiae of it as well, because there aren't really that many, like all the Red Specials. We've done that test. We did a blind test at one of the meetups where we had a very good guitar player in Luke Timmins, who plays professionally as a Queen tribute artist, with his full Brian May rig designed by Nigel Knight at Cat, who does all Brian's live stuff and Luke's rig and his amps, and Not and Luke on his wireless pack, took that into the kitchen at the Village Hall and went through every Red Special replica that was there and your Gibson Les Paul, and close the door, would plug into one we didn't know. He would play the same lick and then come out and go, "Which one is it?" As he stuck. And
it became meaningless after a while, didn't it? Because no one could tell. And in that example, the one guitar that was sort of thrown in as a bit of a red herring just to shake things up a bit, for all the talk of people being able to differentiate wood types and pickups and strings, and this makes this having the bass plate makes this pickup sound a certain way. Well, that all got blown out of the water that day because the Les Paul sounded the same. And you can actually, if you go and watch that video back, to me, I can. Only with the power of hindsight, I can tell it's Les Paul, because there's a certain Les Paul noise that you get when you turn the volume up, and like the ceiling lights start humming through the pickups, and it goes. That's the only signal. But other than that, like, Luke played it as if he was playing a Red Special, with the intent of a Red Special player. And you have a sixpence, and it makes you play in a certain way. I had to sort of stop using a sixpence with it sometimes. It makes you play in the sort of very Brian-y way. Brian-y way? Brian-y way.
Brian-y May.
Yeah, matches, aren't they?
Yeah.
That to me is a really a good proof, an example of that intent shining through the kit.
I think it's just a really interesting thing to have witnessed, and I think if you hadn't been in the room yourself, listening with your own ears and going through that process, it'd be really easy to say, I disagree. Because when you're in your own home and you're doing stuff and you're trying to be scientific with it, you know what you're going to play and you know how you're going to do it. And I think that was just a really good leveler for everyone in the room to go, actually know that the Burns sounds the same as the Guyton, sounds the same as the KZ, sounds the same as the Super, sounds the same as the Homemade, sounds the same as the Gibson Les Paul. It's quite an interesting thing, which leads me back to the reason Brian May sounds like Brian May is because of Brian May, not necessarily the guitar. Yeah. Which gets you part of the way there.
100%. It's you're absolutely right. It's you can get most of the way there, and you can definitely get there to a degree where your audience don't care. I mean, I've always thought, I think 90%, 99% of Queen tribute acts could come on stage with a red Strat. And no one would care.
It would just be us.
Pretty much. But the audience are looking for a different thing, and I think that's really important to remember in music. They're not there listening for the capacitor and the bass plate on the pickup. They are there to listen to the songs played enthusiastically.
And quite often as well, I'd say if you're going to see a Queen tribute act, you're not going to see the Brian May. You're going to see the Freddie Mercury.
Of course.
And the culmination of all of the people doing their thing.
But for most people's heads, it will absolutely be the Freddie Mercury. Yeah.
But we as Red Special fans will go and critique the Red Special guitar player and provide him with all the feedback
he never asked for.
No, which is just what we do, isn't it?
Yeah.
But we're very lucky in that we do have some Queen tribute acts in the forum now.
Yeah.
And we obviously mentioned Luke Timmins. I'm probably going to forget one in a minute. So apologies if you are in one and I don't name check you. Thomas Bronkard always springs to mind, and the fantastic work he's done with all of the acts, the digital
That
stuff.
stuff's incredible. I mean, that's really pushing the whole a new sort of area of the scene forward, isn't it? Because I think people, dismiss the idea of sort of modelling and things because people have had bad experiences in the past. But I think actually, to their credit, what Queen did with I can't remember the name of the product now. What's it called? The guitar modelling thing?
Actifx?
No.
Amplitude.
Yes. Or Amplitude, isn't it?
The tube,
Amplitude. And that stuff actually, to be fair, is incredible and sounds brilliant. And actually, weirdly, you play it through headphones and you sort of get sort of weird feedback and you get that kind of warmth and everything. And I think Thomas has taken that lead and just sort of absolutely run with it. And he does incredible things with it now. You've got Peter Michalowski, who has a huge, sort of legacy of doing tribute stuff in his home country of Sweden. God, there must be others.
There are Craig Farley, who I don't think he's touring again at the moment, and there are more because they're in the group, and I can't think of them all, but there are some fantastic players in the group with some fantastic kit. But I think what Thomas has done, and we're going really off topic talking about Thomas, but I just want to say, has really brought that entry point, like entry into Red Special world of being able to sound like Brian is now so much more affordable. It's definitely not affordable because you need to buy a £800 BMG and then £300 stuff and then a subscription. But compared to where we were originally,
well, that's the thing. I mean, there were the biggest gaps I had. I think between me buying my Les Paul and my first Red Special, which was the Brian May Red Special, which we don't have in the room at the moment, the gap must have been about 11 or 12 years until I got to a point where I was comfortable spending £500, which is what it was at the time. And then, and that was still playing through my Marshall valve state with, one broken speaker and all the rest of it. And then, it's like a couple of years later, okay, I managed to bring, feel the confidence to part with £400 to get an AC30 and Christ, I need to get a treble booster now. That's another 100. And so, there aren't many ways around the guitar kind of thing, but now you can kind of get that and plug it into your laptop. I think that actually is pretty handy for a lot of people.
And it's a great, just for the youngsters that have watched Bohemian Rhapsody and seen Queen tour recently, it's just so good now that they've got that ability to get a very, very good tone.
Yeah.
At such a cheap entry point into this world, and they're doing great things with it as well. And that's the other thing is then you look around at the youth team in the group and what they're putting out, and it's absolutely fantastic.
Oh, it's incredible. I mean,
it makes me want to quit actually because they're that good.
So what I was saying before about not being able to judge your own skills very well, particularly when you're on the ascent. So yes, your rate of ascent when you're learning to play guitar in the first 6 months a year is steep, but you're also a pretty terrible judge of your own abilities. So you think that you're doing good compared to nothing. Yeah. But for years, in my own head, I was a little bit of a Brian May specialist. I can make anything sound like Brian May. I'm really fuck. And now I've still got the recordings and they're dreadful, but I couldn't tell how dreadful they were. Yeah. And I thought I would go along to one of these meetups if such a thing ever existed, and I'd almost be like, stand back, boys, I'm going to show you how to do this one. Yeah. And now I know that actually, if I'm in a room with people who don't play guitar, I'm the best guitar player. If I'm in a room full of people that do play guitar, I'm actually in the lowest quartile or lower than that. So that's been a humbling experience. Yeah. And actually some of the guys coming through that are in their very early 20s are just light years ahead of where I was. They're probably where I thought I was in my head, but they actually are there. And I think all credit to them, because they've just gone so much further and harder and faster than I was able to at that point. Yeah.
I think it's a credit to the forum that stuff's there for them to be able to do and providing feedback, and they're making the most of the situation they've got. And I just find great heart in it that there's actually youngsters out there that still want to do the things that we wanted to do 20 years ago. Yeah. And now we're still picking it up today. There's 6,500 people on the forum.
Wow.
There's new people joining every day, and there's always someone putting a new guitar video up of them playing, and it's far beyond whatever I thought I would be able to do now, let alone back then. So hats off to them.
Oh, yeah. Incredible.
It's tribute to everyone that's dedicated to the community by doing something that helps other people rather than just
like
themselves.
I saw I think Merlan Tommy celebrated his 22nd birthday or something this week, and I look at the stuff that he does, which is just incredible. He can play rings around me, I'm sure, and bass and everything as well. And and I saw the guy is 22 this week, and I thought, oh Christ! So he's definitely set up in a very good position to just excel.
Yeah.
I always wonder when these guys got started, because they say it takes 10,000 hours to get decent at something, and then did they start 10,000 hours ago, or did they just get really good really fast? But either way, I think they're brilliant.
No, it's great, and it's I think it's just exciting, and I think there's a legacy for this thing continuing on into the future.
Yeah.
I think that's really important, that there are people that are going to carry the torch on when we no longer want to, or
no longer capable,
or no longer able to.
Yeah.
I think it's just a great thing, because I think where I'm going with this is just thinking about your journey with it and how you've got to where you are today. And I guess what I want to ask is gone from my mind.
That's all right.
Because that happens all the time. But what I think I'm going for is like just asking you, at what point did you find the forum, and that must have been later on in life rather than you weren't at university doing that?
No,
I don't remember you coming along until like the mid 2010s.
It was around 2010, and a load of things happened in one go. I got the money, the famous 500 quid to buy the guitar with, which I really thought long and hard about, because it was like, do I eat this month? Coming back to like the 50 quid for an amp, now it's 500 quid for a guitar, but you're still like, you're going to have to take the hit on something. And actually an event was coming up at the time, the Hay Festival, that Brian was going to be speaking at. And I thought, well, if I get this guitar, I could also like achieve a bit of a sort of lifetime ambition, which is get him to sign it. And I concocted this plan that, okay, I'll purchase this guitar that I can't entirely afford. I'll take it along to this book signing that he's doing, and then, see if fortune favours the brave and see if he'll sign it for me. And to be fair to him, he did. He was very nice about it. And so that came around then. And I think it was at that sort of 2010, 2011 point that I was like, oh, I probably should see if there are any forums about this now. And that's when I found, sort of one or two incarnations, prior to what it is today, versions of the UK forum, I guess you would call it, which was just incredibly busy, multiple, dozens of posts a day. And as soon as I found that, it was like this whole universe of information opened up, because I'd gone from thinking, okay, the Red Special is about Burns or this guild thing and something called a treble booster. And then you had people on there going, oh, well, I've got a Guyton, and someone else said, I've got a KZ, and someone else said, I've got a this, and I've got a that, and I've got this type of treble booster, and I've got this type of AC30, and oh my God. And, all the pickup settings and everything. And it was just like this whole universe just opened up in front of me. And all of a sudden I'd gone from thinking that I knew everything that there was to know to I know nothing. I know absolutely nothing about this. And there's some people speaking very confidently on this forum, and perhaps in ways that are mutually exclusive of each other. And so not quite knowing what to believe or what was what, really.
It's so interesting, because it is just, I always describe it, I think I described it to Brian as a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
And I think
it's like a fractal, it's like one of those shapes that every time you zoom in on it, like another little branch opens up. And,
it's a rabbit hole inside a rabbit hole inside a rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Because you start to, maybe, where did you start then? Because there was that original forum, there's so much information in it. And anyone that wants to learn anything about the guitar should sign up to the forum, because there is just a wealth of information and posts from 20 years ago. Must be 15 years ago.
Yeah, well, I think it got sort of wiped out at one point, didn't it? And it had to come back.
Maybe 10 years worth.
Yeah, there's probably about 10 years worth.
There's quite a lot of decent...
There's certainly, like, there's stuff going back to the 2011 meetup on there. Yeah. So, I mean, that's, as we speak now, it's about 13 years ago or something, isn't it? So, wow, that's crazy.
So, was that the first meetup you went to?
The first one I went to was, I believe, in 2010 in Hugglescote Village Hall. And I sort of went along to that again, sort of thinking, I don't quite know now what my place in the hierarchy of understanding this topic is, but I'm going to go along. And all sorts of weird things happened that day. But again, I just realised how relatively just little I understood about, because I thought it would just be people sat around playing Red Specials or whatever. And there was all these things coming out, like the Deaky was there, the actual Deaky amp came out. So for the uninitiated, one of Brian's recording amps that was sort of made back in the day with loose bits by John Deacon. And that came out. And there were all these people go, "Oh my God, the Deaky!" And someone was, "Oh, do you want to have a play on the Deaky?" What would I play on it? I don't really know what it's for. I probably would try and do my broken version of Bohemian Rhapsody on it, and someone would go, "Oh, that's the wrong song." So and then other things happened. Like they'd then say. Someone would come up on stage, a guest speaker, and I remember someone being introduced, and with the words, "And now a man who needs no introduction," and it was someone that I'd never heard of. Yeah. So actually, in that sort of situation, he probably could have done with an introduction to at least some of the people in the room. And so there was a lot of kind of assumed knowledge, I guess, and that's why now I think when I talk to people about it, I like to assume that they know nothing. Because it can be quite a weird thing to show up to if you don't have the context in your head for some of the, the minutiae and this person who modified the whatever in 1974 and all that kind of thing.
Oh, you've met him?
Yeah.
Nice guy.
Yeah, needs no introduction.
Yeah. So 2010 was that?
Yeah.
And then you went to the 2011.
I went to the 2011 one thinking, I actually sort of came away from the 2010 one in a weird way, sort of thinking, okay, I don't know if that was necessarily for me, because it all seems a bit like people just concentrating on weird sort of aspects of this, which I wasn't really previously aware of. And I thought they'd all be talking about that sort of string raking thing, that sound. Yeah. I thought it'd just be people talking about stuff like that all day. Yeah. You'd probably make a crap meetup. But I came back to the next...
We can try it.
Yeah, and I came back to the next one, and this was in a different location. So I think at this point it moved to a place in Berkshire. I forget the name now, but and I brought along a few of my bits and pieces and sort of put them out on a little stand, like my guitars and that. And no one was interested because it wasn't like Queen equipment. But that meetup ended up becoming a sort of a famous meetup. Yeah. In another way.
What happened there, Dan? Because I was involved in the Red Special community from about 2001, 2002, and then disappeared for a while because life happened and I wasn't in the mind space to be at meetups and on the forum, and so I took a break from it to sort my life out, and I missed this opportunity, but something turned up.
Yeah. So this was the meetup in which the participants, unbeknownst to them and only the organisers, would actually get to play the Red Special that Brian May made back in the day and played on, almost all the songs and almost all the gigs for every song at those gigs, which is something that I just never ever thought would happen. I mean, there was a huge period of my life where I thought I wouldn't get to play at Burns, so my expectations were pretty low as it was. And then this actually came out, and with about 5 minutes' notice, they said, okay, if you, I think the deal was if you made a charity donation, which is quite a nice thing to do, you could have a quick play on it for like a minute or so. And if you've ever tried to play someone else's guitar, it can be a little bit sort of daunting. It feels different. I sometimes get this thing where I can either be a confident guitar player or get the sticky hands. And I can't move my hand down the neck and the fingers become rigid and all sorts of weird things happen. That happened on that day. So I think, I can't remember where I was in terms of playing the guitar, but there is a video of me doing it. And I just, I play with all this, the pickup settings all wrong, so it all sounds all weirdy and thin, and I'm trying to do like One Vision or something. And, my hand, they put it on me and my hands just immediately went sticky and, my fingers didn't move, and I remember trying to play it. And this one guitar that I'd wanted to play all my life, and ever since, whenever I see it, I from time to time I think, I've actually played that actual guitar. And people go, what, like a red one like that? No, the actual. But in that moment, I remember just feeling really nervous with it. B, that really showing. I'm not going to pretend that it didn't. And just struggling to think what to play on it. And yeah, it was all a bit of a car crash, really. But I felt very grateful. But it just, I wish I'd had time to sort of psych myself up for it. And it sounds silly, but
I think if you put it into context, though, so what Dan hasn't said, and obviously I wasn't there, but I've been made aware of what's happened and spoken to people that have been there, is Pete Malandrone, who is Brian's guitar tech, bought the guitar with him for people to play.
Yeah.
Mike Ride had his then Cosmos Rocks rig there,
right.
so that people could play Brian's guitar through the same rig Brian was playing through at the time. Now, I would imagine if you were handed Brian's guitar to play through a full Brian May rig with Pete Malandrone, who sits and watches Brian play every day, all the time, in a group of people that maybe you know a bit more than you did about the guitar, you could be forgiven for getting a bit nervous.
Yeah, pretty much. It was like, imagine looking up and you've got 40 or 50 critical eyes watching you, and they all could do what you're doing probably better than you're doing it at that moment. So it's not even just random members of the public. And yeah, I just remember it completely kind of going to shit, really.
I think it's important just to point that out, that there's a reason why it wasn't just the guitar was there and you got to play it. And, because Pete's quite a big character in himself, and he wouldn't be upset with me saying that. So he's there looking after it, and he's quite a presence. So that's going to play on it too. And the fact you only got a small amount of time with it and you didn't know it was coming, and you kind of, it's one of those dream moments. Is this really happening? And you only get such a short time with it.
Yeah, and it was being timed. So I think Pete had a stopwatch, and it was almost like 5, 4, 3. And then on the video, you can actually see me, just to be funny, it went 2, 1, and I just got the tremolo and went, and there's this sudden intake of breath, because I think everyone thought that I would suddenly have sent it massively out of tune or something, and it didn't. But it was just, oh my God, he did the tremolo. Probably the only sort of bit that I didn't cock up.
So apart from that bit of like feeling you cocked up, do you remember anything specific about it?
The guitar itself, because what's weirdly anachronistic about the Red Special as opposed to all other Red Specials, if that makes sense, is all the other ones that you pick up, typically speaking, are reasonably new. I mean, these days they're probably getting on for 20 years old, some of them. There's a lot that are under 10. Whereas it was the only one that I'd picked up that had yellow bits and cracks and rough edges and and splits and all that sort of thing. And you just get used to all of them being reasonably in decent nick, especially in about 2010. There weren't an awful lot of them in the world at that point. Whereas it looked it has fundamental sort of flaws, as it does as a handmade instrument. Their first guitar they'd ever made, and being even at that point must have been 50 years old or so.
Yeah, close to.
And then there are sort of, I remember trying to bend the strings, and because of the frets being quite worn, I found that quite difficult. I quite like to have a lot of action on strings reasonably high on my guitars, because I just find it easier to bend the strings that way. And actually the action, I think because of the way it was set up and/or the quite worn frets meant that the string was very close to the fretboard as it was, which I found quite hard to get my fingers under. So again, you can hear me trying to bend a string and it just goes and your finger sort of slides under the string kind of thing. That was tricky. And I just remember looking down at it and seeing, the green, sort of green coloured tremolo tip, and the sort of splits all the way down the neck, and the little filled in holes, and the cracks, and the yellow bits that would be white on mine looking like all these white bits here, but it was almost like deep kind of yellow around those bits, and that weirdly sort of threw me more than anything else. But also because I wasn't used at that point to playing any sort of authentic Red Special, there are things that separate a authentic-ish one, including Brian's one, from a BMG. So my BMG had enormous white switches on it that stick out about that far from the body, whereas on his one, they're almost so shallow that they're almost inside the pickguard itself, and they almost don't stick out the tops at all. I mean, these are probably a little bit bigger. So I remember trying to turn the switches on and just going, it's like they've fallen off. Yeah. Like compared to my BMG, it looked like it had massive levers on it, and this thing just had like a little white dot inside it somewhere. Yeah,
it's really interesting what you can remember from it, because it's quite a while ago, so it's clearly ingrained in your memory.
Yeah.
So after that, then I think that was the last meetup for a while. I think Mike Ride, who'd arranged that, had then
I seem to remember it had gone back to Hugglescope for at least a year or two.
maybe.
Yeah, and I think it sort of came back to where it had spent some time before, and I remember it going back there for a year or two afterwards. Yeah,
I wasn't around, so
yeah.
I can't really remember. But then, 2016, 2017, I can't remember.
17, I think.
17, a plucky young man by the name of John Underhill
Yes.
decided to move it to Reading. And I think it'd been a few years without one. And so we put something together and said where we were going to put it, and had a big argument about where in the UK it should be. And I stuck to my guns that I had to travel. And you turned up, you trusted in me, and you were there playing your guitars very loudly from the very outset of the day.
Which just sort of became a meme, didn't it? That was always one of the things that I found funny about those meetups, is people would spend the whole year going, oh, you need to play the guitars fully up, and the amp needs to be fully up, and it gets to this one day, I go, well, should we turn the amps fully up then? Oh, no, turn that down. So I always find that was a little bit ironic.
We might have finally figured out how to do that properly this
year.
Yeah.
I think perhaps it's nice when things take a break a little bit, isn't it? Because I think perhaps by the end of the even 2 or 3 or 4 that I'd been to, I sort of thought, okay, I think we've all said everything that we can say on this topic.
Yeah.
And to go away for a couple of years and then come back, it was like it came back with renewed enthusiasm and all of the developments and whatever else had happened in the industry and in the scene at the time. So there was new things to talk about.
And then I've jumped ahead with my questioning, unfortunately. But so the question I really should have asked and wanted to was it after you'd played the Red Special that you then sought out a more accurate replica? When did the KZ turn up in your history? So
the KZ, I think that came along around 2017. So it was well after playing the actual Red Special, and getting to a point where I could part with more than 500 quid. And it just sort of came together. There was a time where I was like, okay, I'm gonna starve again for a bit. I think I've reached that moment where I can get my next, decent guitar. And it was just at a time that Sean Lever put on eBay, I think, the one that I ended up buying.
Yeah.
And it was a nice bit of serendipity, because I was like, I want to buy one, but I want one that sort of feels very clean and looks very sort of perfect. Like I don't want one that's sort of relict or sort of has, even unintended sort of wobbly edges and things. And he, at that very moment that I decided I was ready, put up for sale the KZ guitar, which is made in Japan, and to anyone that's ever played it, it is sort of very Japanese in its construction sort of accuracy. Or I don't know. Well, I mean, it has things that separate it from Brian's Red Special, but in terms of just an instrument in and of itself, it's very straight lines, clean.
It's very precise.
It's very symmetrical. It's almost like the difference between a car made in Japan versus a car made in the UK. And actually, I think the people make it's unfair because people make great things in the UK, including Red Special guitars. But I think Japan just has a certain culture for really taking care over the very last step on everything, and because of that, it's a very glassy, clean, sort of very perfect. The finish on it is lovely, and just everything is just it's very hard to just find a spot that's out of place on it. So it's a very nice guitar, and I've still got it. And Sean, every time I see him, I do sort of bring it along, and he has like a little reunion, and sort of whether he regrets selling it or not, I'm not sure. You'd have to ask him.
Yeah, maybe he does, maybe he doesn't. But it's nice that he gets to see it and he comes along, and I think that's a nice thing, is that quite often if the guitars are sold within the group, they turn up at the meetups, and so the previous owner gets to see it again, because it's quite a small. It's not that small, but a smallish community.
Yeah.
So 2017, you pick that up. Then when do you start falling down the treble booster minefield?
Well, so I think at this point I already had all of that stuff, because I had my BMG, the one that Brian signed, and so really quickly after I got the BMG, I think I got the Vox VBM1, which is down there somewhere, and that had a treble booster built in. And so for a time, actually, I used the inbuilt treble booster fed out to the AC30 that I bought. And actually, weirdly, people never sort of really cottoned onto that as a concept, but I quite liked that sound. I don't think it ever really sort of took off, but that was one of the features that it had. And then I think I decided that, okay, I need to start getting some... Well, you start finding things to tinker with, really, don't you? And so I started trying all of these different, particularly Fryer boosters and various other secondhand bits and pieces that people sent me. The very first booster I had actually was one from Steve McCullough. If he's watching, he very, very nicely sent me a dual sort of booster thing, which was the first one that I had when I had no money. So thank you to Steve. But I did start then, going through strings and treble boosters and changing the capacitor and all that kind of stuff that I was kind of mocking before. And to limited effect, I guess.
I think it's interesting. I think most people go on that journey.
Yeah.
I think if I could give anyone one piece of advice that I've picked up, and I'm sure you'd agree, Dan, is just play the guitar.
Just play the guitar.
Yeah.
Just play the guitar. And if you can possibly push for better, although I don't know if this sort of cuts against your point a little bit, but if you're thinking I'll get the cheap version of something before then investing in the better version, chances are you'll end up getting the better version and you'll have wasted a little bit more money by getting the cheap one in the first place. So it's like don't let having cheap stuff put you off starting. By all means, play what you've got. But if you're about to invest and you've got a choice between two things, ask yourself if you're going to end up wanting the bigger, better one fairly quickly, because you may find it's actually cheaper in the long run to just go straight for it. And then I know it's not that easy, but
no, I think it's good advice, and I think it's something that resonates with probably most of the forum, where we've all tried the cheaper thing and then ended up going, well, now I need the real thing.
Now I need the real one.
And that's a rabbit or a trap to fall in. So then you have also, since that, you've done lots of other things related to the Red Special. So I know for a fact that you have, linking into modern day Dan, you've gone on from playing Red Special on a slight deviation from that. You are now Dan Thomas from TikTok, who talks about Glastonbury Festival.
Yeah.
So you have a whole history of Glastonbury, and I believe you played a Red Special at Glastonbury.
I did once. Like years ago, there was an event called the Mick Jagger off or Stones, Rolling Stones. What's the word? Flash mob or something, where people get together in a field and sing a song. And I took my Red Special along weirdly to Glastonbury because I thought it would travel better than my sort of other guitars. And I got making TikTok videos like a lot of people in 2020, and one of the things that actually sort of captured my attention on TikTok originally was seeing the reception I got to putting my Red Special videos on there, because I'd put videos online in various formats in the past, and YouTube and sort of Facebook and what have you, and 12 people would watch it, and you go, okay. And weirdly, what sort of really turned me on to TikTok as a medium was I put up a video of me playing We Will Rock You. I'm a lot slimmer in that video as well. I kind of wish I was as slim as I am in that. But then I went to bed and I woke up the next day and 5,000 people had watched it. And that, I was like, what the hell? How could 5,000 people have watched me, badly playing We Will Rock You? And I thought, that's weird. And in the way that sometimes opportunities find you a little bit, I was like, okay, I'm going to stick up another video. And I did a mixture of guitar stuff. I did some Beatles things, I did some Guns N' Roses or whatever. And all the Queen stuff seemed to get a really warm reception, particularly because I was playing the Red Special in all of them. And then someone would say, can you do Killer Queen? And I'd do Killer Queen, and then I'd do something else and do something else. And in those videos, they're quite sort of embryonic versions of what would become my TikTok channel, and they're very different to what I do now. I don't speak in them, whereas I kind of talk in all of my videos now. And but it was weirdly the first little bit that got me sort of any attention on TikTok was putting up my Red Special videos. And then for a while, my most popular video was me just explaining all the different guitars that I had at that point. Yeah. It was just a minute spent on all of my guitars, and that I was beginning to get a sense that TikTok was something that more than any social network would go and find the fans and the viewers of the thing that you wanted to talk about. One, that it would massively reward you talking about things that you actually want to talk about. And whenever I tried to second guess that and talk about things that I thought other people wanted to hear, it would never do that well. But if you have enthusiasm about something, it would then go and find the people that enthusiastically want to watch. And it was weird because at the time, TikTok was like considered a young people's dancing app, really. But there were a few people out there on the scene going, no, like really, it's just a video hosting app. You can put anything you want in that rectangle. Also, put something in there that you really want to tell people about. So I was like, okay, I'm going to talk about my Red Special or my guitar collection, and that people just really seemed to respond to that, and that did get me an early little sort of leg up, a little boost up, or a little vote of confidence in terms of just putting videos online at all, which up until that point had kind of always eluded me a little bit.
Yeah. I remember watching a video of you putting your tent up in Glastonbury one year, which I think is probably the turning point of where, for me anyway, watching you from a distance.
Yeah.
Where you started to go down the route of Glastonbury content, which is, I would suggest, possibly giving you what you would know because you look at all the stats and stuff.
Yeah.
Where you've ended up with your bigger trajectory on TikTok.
Yeah, it definitely signalled a change for a number of reasons. So I've been doing the Red Special and guitar related recordings for a while. The trouble with me is that my brain wants to hyper obsess over too many things at the same time. So whilst I loved playing the guitars, I wasn't really saying anything in them, and there wasn't really anything that I could say about them. And I thought, okay, I wanted to still talk about or show things that I care about, but I sort of want to talk about them a bit more. I felt that I'd run out of road when it came to putting music covers online because I didn't feel that was fully reflective of me. And I thought, I'm going to try just talking about experiences a bit more. And I'd put up a couple of holiday, travel type videos, but they were nothing like the sorts of things you'd see on my, they had that voiceover, that TikTok voice that says, join me on a trip to Robin Hood's Bay in Yorkshire, that kind of automated voice. It was that. And, and you wouldn't even see me in it. It would just be me pointing the camera forwards and it'd have this automated voiceover. And I thought, this is going to set the world alight. And obviously it doesn't because there's a million videos like that. And, but again, this message that I'd sort of already heard, which is, use TikTok for talking about things that you really care about and then see what happens, was, becoming louder in my head. And I thought, okay, well, these travel videos that I've made that you don't see me speak or say anything or see me in aren't working. The guitar thing, I think I've sort of gone as far as I can with it. But I like going to Glastonbury and I like talking about it. So I thought I'm going to make some quick videos at Glastonbury when I go there next week, as it was at the time, and see what happens. And as it would turn out, on the first day, I got there quite a bit earlier than the rest of my friends, who were going to be about another 7 hours or something ridiculous. So I thought, what can I do in 7 hours? I'd had this idea of just wanting to do a time lapse of putting up a tent. I don't know why, but I tried it a few times, and just the camera had always been pointed the wrong way, or the screen would turn off or something. It would stop recording, and it never worked. So I thought, I'm going to try and do this time lapse of me putting a tent up. And I did it, and then and that was kind of the first time that I'd appeared in a travel video of any sort, but it was also the first time I'd done a voiceover on one of my videos. So I then spent the next hour trying to record a 1 minute long voiceover for this video, which I didn't know how to do it in segments back then. So he had to do the whole minute in one take. So every time I got to 58 seconds and cocked a word up, I had to start again. So, that took a while. I put it online and then waited, for my friends to turn up. And over the course of that day, it just went absolutely stratospheric. And this is a really good example of what I was talking about before, about not being able to predict what the popular stuff is or the unpopular stuff. Because I thought that video of me putting a tent up was going to be watched by 20 people. It ended up being watched by 1 million people in a day. Yeah. So I'd gone from being quite excited about 5,000 people watching me play We'll Rock You to, holy hell, 1 million. And my phone just, every time someone followed me, and my follower count just went up like over thousands a day. I'd spent 2 years on TikTok with 500, having to earn my way to 500 followers, and by the end of that week at Glastonbury, it was 10,000. Yeah. So that again was like another sort of vote of confidence, and it was another signal from the social media gods of, oh, you might be onto something here. And I think actually looking back on it, the reason that video did quite as well as it was a number of things. It's quite hooky, so I wasn't really thinking about these things at the time, but I say, here's how I set up my inflatable tent for Glastonbury. And I think just the word inflatable immediately captures people. They think you're going to be staying in a bouncy castle or something. But also, I think it was the fact that there was I was possibly the only or one of the only people that was publishing video from Glastonbury, certainly that day and at that time in the morning. So, 7, 8, 9 o'clock in the morning. This was 2022. Now you look at Glastonbury on TikTok and it's enormous. Yeah. Like it's a really cool, massive community to be part of. Back then it was a little bit like creating in a vacuum. So I think certainly on that day and perhaps even for that week, there weren't loads of people making TikToks about Glastonbury. And so I think if people are interested in a topic in we were talking about this earlier, part of being one of the few creators in a particular niche is you can feel a little bit defeatist about it, or you can think, oh, well, no one else is making this stuff, or you can think, oh, no one else is making this stuff. Yeah. So actually, weirdly, I think on that particular year, it sort of counted in my favour because it meant all the Glastonbury eyeballs, at least for the first few hours of that week, as it turned out, or the first day of that week, were pretty much on me because no one else was putting anything on there. And I took that from people then saying, okay, well, you put your tent up, show us what the festival's like. Yeah. So I thought, oh crap, okay, I'm going to commit to doing a daily vlog where I just show what happened in that day, and those videos are still online. They're really rough, but I'm really proud of them because I managed to knock them out each morning after each day at the festival. And again, they were like 1 million views, 1.5 million views, 2 million views. I came back and I started talking about the festival more, and it was like 4 million views, 6 million views, and it just for a while it just absolutely exploded, and in a way that I never thought it was going to.
It's a pretty good story, though.
Thank you.
Well, it's cool because I remember, as we spoke earlier, I remember watching that tent video on your social media and being like, "That's a pretty cool video," because it was different to what you'd put out before.
Sure.
And I think because, as you've said, Dan, it was like I knew Glastonbury was going on, but it was the first and only thing that was around because you probably got there that early.
Yeah, it was a case of being there super early and my mates being relatively late turning up. So there's like just a chasm of time just opened up where I had to fill it with something. Yeah,
and I just think that people took that as, what's going on with Glastonbury? Oh, this guy's putting his tent up. Well, it's quite interesting. I wonder what he's going to do. And so it snowballs and snowballs and snowballs. And I think that's great. But you also had the foresight or post thought to actually continue doing it and see where it's taking you. And I think if you, look at where you've got to now with it. So what are we now with 2024? So 2 years later? Yeah,
2 years. And the a bit like what I was saying before, your rate of the way that you upskill at the start is pretty rapid, but you also don't notice where your flaws are. Yeah. Now, I mean, there's stuff that I'm making today that I'll no doubt cringe at in a year's time, but that first year of the vlogs and stuff, there's all kinds of just weird sort of pacing things in there that I probably wouldn't do now. But it just accelerated to the point where I was like, okay, this is getting a lot of attention now. But I also had that feeling of I don't just want to talk about one thing. So it's never sat entirely right for me to just talk about Glastonbury. Much as Glastonbury has been amazing to me, has provided me with that huge leg up and continues to do so. I was like, I want to be able to talk about other things going on in the world or other travels or other things that you can do in the UK, for example. So I did make a conscious effort quite early on just to show there are other arrows in this quiver, and I immediately just went out to the United States and did like the same kind of presentation vlog as I would do at Glastonbury, but driving between different states instead.
Particularly like the Dollywood episode.
The Dollywood, do you know what, there's this whole, so I looked at it the other day, there's a 20 episode playlist of what I called the USA road trip in 2022, and it was a week after Glastonbury. And God, I wish I'm actually quite envious of how productive I was then because I managed to put those videos out every single morning. I just committed, and I was thinking
Yeah.
I was just so excited about it. Oh my God, I'm going to get today's video out.
Yeah.
And I was literally sat in petrol stations and stuff in the because I was driving at the same
Yeah.
time. And like, I don't know where I found the time or the will or anything. But yeah, one of those episodes was Dollywood. And actually that whole middle part of that trip, which is where it goes through Pigeon Forge. And if you've not heard of Pigeon Forge, it sounds like a bit of a one-horse town. It's actually amazing. It's almost like a very adult Disney World. And Dollywood is there, and I remember being sort of quite impressed with Tennessee, and that sort of that middle part, because it was a drive from Washington DC to Nashville, and actually being more sort of impressed with the middle part of that drive than I thought I was going to be.
And from my perspective, I mean, it's been great to see your success, but it's also been cool just to watch where you're going and what you're up to. And I know you don't necessarily, at that point, you were putting videos out the day after.
It happened, yeah. The events, yeah.
Might not do that quite so much.
No,
now. Little spoiler there.
I'm a little bit more considered now. So I think I like to say that I'm taking my time on the edits and the effects and the music mixing and all that sort of thing. But I think actually it's a little bit of just protecting your own health, because when you commit to putting videos out every single morning, it ends up just overriding absolutely everything, and you kind of realise after a while that. Like, it's not that no one cares, but if they see it a couple of weeks later or whatever, or even a few months later, you can't just, because it was just absolutely mentally draining me putting the things out every single day, and you feeling the pressure of, I'm getting to lunchtime and I haven't put it out yet, and then you get to a certain point where you spend so much of the day editing that you're not actually doing anything, and then well, how does that affect the next day?
Yeah. I found it interesting watching your Glastonbury videos when you first put them out, and then your travel videos to know where you were in the world and what you're up to, because it's quite interesting, obviously knowing you through the Red Special connection and having met you properly in 2017. I've been aware of you beforehand, but like properly getting to know you through that period, and then the subsequent years, seeing what you're up to is quite good fun. It's as a mate rather than like looking at you as Dan Thomas from TikTok.
Yeah, the whole Dan Thomas from TikTok thing is quite funny, because I get recognised in certain contexts now, particularly at Glastonbury and every so often somewhere else, which is kind of weird, because I think what people are recognising is not me.
No.
It's I always think like, yes, I talk to my mates about Glastonbury or whatever, but I never go up to them and go, good news, everyone! The Glastonbury 2024 lineup's just been announced. Like, I'd say, oh, have you seen the lineups? Yeah. And it's it's not me, and I know.
No.
It's like I know in listening to your podcast, I know that I'm not entirely listening to you either. Yeah. But there's a version of you, because if I was to talk about these things in my normal voice, I would just sound very bored.
Yeah. That's why I struggle with that.
Yeah.
Like coming across not in monotone boringness. I don't think you do, but it's a real thing though. Like, and one of the things I wanted to ask you, because I struggle with it, is you obviously have to listen to yourself talk quite a lot.
Oh yeah.
Does it ever get easier?
I don't particularly like listening to my own voice, and I don't like the sound of it. But I think what does get easier is hitting the mark first time, or closer to first time. Yeah. So saying things without quite so many retakes and all that sort of thing. I think that gets easier. But I don't find it pleasurable to look at my own face or hear my own voice, and there's an awful lot of both on my videos.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, being your true self and talking about the things that you care about, to a certain extent, does necessitate an amount of showing up, as they say, and talking in your own voice, and so it does have, it does bring those kind of benefits too. But yeah, I don't find it pleasurable. The biggest thing that I would like at the moment is for someone to edit my videos, but edit them in a way that I don't want to say edit them in a way that I would edit them, because I think a proper editor would very potentially or very probably do a better job. So I don't want to necessarily emulate me, but at least, if there's a funny bit in a video where I think, okay, in that 3-hour long rush I've just given you, I want that funny bit to be in there, I'd hope that they would be able to spot that and almost, have it germinate in the way that I almost imagined when I recorded it. That is the nice thing about recording and editing stuff yourself, is what is meant to stay in and what isn't.
One, what you've set up to pay off later, and that you can provide that to yourself, can't you? have Andrek Hernandez help me edit this now. So that's a whole conversation we have to have each time as to what we need to do or add or change or put in or make sure is within a video. So it's
How do you communicate that?
so quite often I'll do the rough cut,
Yeah.
and then when I might even trying to think now because it's been a while. So like literally, I've not done a podcast for 6 months because of life stuff, and I've come back to doing it. So I'm trying to remember. I think what I generally do is we'll rough cut the episode and take out the stuff I don't want, and then I'll record the intro and the outro. And in the intro or the outro, I'll talk to him. So I will say,
"Oh wow,
oh Andrek, there's this bit at this time where I think this said by this person, I want to keep that in, and when I do this, I think it's funny. So can you make sure you keep it?"
Oh, that's cool.
So
And you're probably just saving time by getting it out at that point, aren't you?
Yeah, because usually I've edited it, then I'm doing the intro.
Yeah.
So I'll talk to him and ask him to add things in and go, "Oh, don't forget we said we were going to do this time." And he's absolutely amazing, and he genuinely does a better job than I do.
Yeah.
So he is an absolute godsend for getting this stuff out,
Right.
and doing it in a way that's better than I have. So we'll have those comments and then leave it to him and trust in him completely that he's going to edit it the right way, because otherwise I would get too involved in doing it. So I've been lucky in that I was able to have a go at letting go earlier in the podcast, and so I'm not as overly bothered by certain things.
Yes.
Certain things like the Brian May video or the Brian May interview.
Yes.
That was 3 of us editing it.
Wow. Who was the third?
Luke Holwerder.
Oh, okay.
Which
I thought you were going to say it was Brian himself.
which is probably quite evident if you watch it.
Right.
Because Luke's very specific.
Right, okay.
The teaser video for the Brian May episode, that was probably, we spent more time on that than we did
The actual
episode.
Yeah.
And then the rig rundown, or the rig review, I can't call it rundown for legal reasons.
Oh, yes. That time that you ran down the rig.
Yeah. That was generally me editing it to be what it was, and then Andrek added some nice finishing touches and added some bits to it just to make it look a bit nicer. So
Right.
So I do the rough bit, talk to him through the camera and say, can you please add this bit, and then let him do it. I mean, he's brilliant, and he is also a fan, so he knows what he wants. So he's
a little bit closer to the finished article in the first place, perhaps. Yeah.
And we talk quite a lot.
Yeah.
Through Messenger, when we're doing it, so he's invaluable.
So I think that's the biggest thing that's harming me at the moment is I've recorded so much more than anyone has ever seen, and I like to do as much of everything as I can. I've always been a big believer in wear all the hats. You know, like some people just are like that in life, and some people like to be in a big team, and I like to upskill more than I like to be among people handling a role each. But I think at the moment I've definitely got to the point where that pride has gotten in the way.
Yeah.
And there's stuff just not being seen, and that absolutely kills me inside, knowing that I've got stuff that the world needs to see my art. But you spend hours recording on something that no one ever sees. It doesn't make you want to do a lot more. I
think it's a really interesting point though, where you can take it in different directions, and that's a conversation you have to have with yourself and decide what you're happy to let go of and what you're not. And there's no harm in trying it.
And the audience, what you have to remember, it's a bit like it said about, the audience doesn't care what guitar you've got. No. The audience doesn't care about what edit you saw in your head.
No.
They don't know about the missing scene.
No.
They really don't.
No, and they're not really that fussed about all those clever plans you had, or the fact that you put a prop in that no one's seen that you think's so funny.
Yeah.
Because no one cares.
Because they don't care.
Yeah, because they don't see it, because actually not in the shot, or because it's off to the side, or that joke you tried to play off that didn't, and you get frustrated with, and so you bin it off. And they only know what they know. So you got to kind of let them enjoy it. And I think, you can always get someone to help, and if you don't like it, change it. But it's just interesting because talking to, I'm not going to say I'm a creator, because I definitely don't do what you do. And this is just me talking to my friend Dan Thomas. It's pretty easy. But it's interesting talking to creators about how their process is and what they do and how they go about looking at things, because of my own approach, which is different. and certainly take things away from you. I know you've been a great help in helping with certain bits of tech and ideas and trying to get me on TikTok, which is still maybe
That's where all the cool kids are.
Yeah, that's why I'm not on it.
Yeah. Although weirdly, you know what I'm really looking forward to is the successor to TikTok. A lot of people fear, what if a new network comes along and I lose all of this following that I've built up? And actually, there's a motivational speaker called Gary Vaynerchuk.
Yep.
And some of the motivation that I got, like that early messaging from him saying, this dancing app, put other stuff on it, trust me, that came from him. And he was spot on. And one of the things that he says, and people don't always like him, he's a bit of a marmite, as motivational speakers are. Most of them are. But he says, when a new network comes along, seize that opportunity, because it's a bit like, again, you get to be one of the few creators that all the eyes are on.
Yep.
So I think that the next time another network comes along, and really do, something I do now is I sign up to all of them, no matter how minor they sound, because who was going to sign up to the lip syncing song dancing app? TikTok, right? Who was going to sign up to the one that made your photos look like Polaroids on Instagram, or the college notice board, Facebook? Just get on all of these things when they turn up, and then I try to sort of put a few videos on them and get a few in early, so I am quite weirdly looking forward to whatever the next new big thing happens to be, and hopefully being a little bit more proactive about being one of the few people making stuff on it.
I think Gary V's it's a really great point, Dan. And I also think Gary V is just a fantastic viewpoint on how to look at all these things and how to live your life and how to view work.
Yeah, it's certainly like pursuing your passions and what's important in life and what have you. I think he has more sort of hits than misses on a lot of those topics.
Yeah, he's definitely one to listen to if you want to know what the next big thing is going to be.
Yeah.
And so leading on from that, what's the next thing for you?
Oh, crap. I would love to get edited. I've got about 15 episodes worth of stuff I recorded in LA about a month ago. I think I put out 2 episodes of it, and then I just, real life took over and other things got in the way. But that video is still there. So I've got a whole lot of stuff I did in and around California, which I would love to get finished. I would love to go. My dream is to resume something that I started, which was in 2023. I set out to traverse really the biggest part of Japan up through the middle, and it just didn't work out.
Sorry
that way.
for laughing.
I know. So I kind of had an aborted attempt at travelling through. In fact, I've been to Japan twice, and it's ended with failure both times. The first one was March 2020, and you can kind of guess what happened then. And the second time, I came home in a wheelchair after 3 days. So, it's weird. I still want to go back there, but I don't really believe in these things, but if there ever was a divine force telling me not to do something, it feels like it's shouting it at me at the moment.
All I'm going to say is if you do decide to go back, you let me know so we can batten down the hatches and sit in the air raid shelter.
That's right. Well, this is my joke, is that I'll just keel over on the plane over there or something next time, because it's just gotten kind of I've only been there twice, but it's such an amazing country that I would love to go back there and actually resume that trip. And in a way, the opportunity that comes out of the setback of having to cancel it the first time round is I would love to go back and do something like that with a team, with someone that can hold the camera, with someone that can, because what that experience showed me is if you want to get microphones out and cameras and tripods and things like that, if you've ever tried doing that on your own, you feel like a complete prick doing it sometimes. And you try and punch through all of that nerviness and stuff, and then it's just you're dropping stuff. Where's that cable gone?
Yep.
And it just another pair of hands would have been really handy there. As it would turn out, another pair of hands would have been really handy when I couldn't physically walk or carry a suitcase or anything. So it kind of showed that what that experience showed me is, because I love solo travel, I find it really, really rewarding. It's when I solo travel, that's when I start to feel, oh God, this is where life is. I suddenly feel like endorphins firing in my brain that I didn't know I had, and all that sort of thing. But it also shows you how exposed you are, how you have no sort of redundancy if things go wrong. And things can go wrong in a fairly minor way. Thank God they didn't go wrong in any sort of really major sense, but if you're suddenly incapacitated in any way, shape, or form, not having someone there with you can really massively affect that, and it did then. I'm not sure where the balance is there, because I think having a team around you, it stops being that solo travel, solo journey of wonder and excitement, and it becomes a little bit more organised, and people want looking after and various other things, and people aren't always going to want to come over and just do it for the hell of it. People want sort of paying and insuring and things like that, and so it becomes a bit more difficult. But I would love to go back to Japan and just resume that trip. Finish off the editing of the LA stroke California stuff. After that, I don't know what the future holds, but I've never known. I didn't know in June of 2022 that my videos were going to be viral a month later. I didn't know coming back from that what I was going to do, and weirdly, I thought that I would pivot from Glastonbury into becoming a baking channel. I put up 2 videos about me baking bread, and it just, the follower count just went through the floor. But I was just like, I'm just going to fire out randomly things that I want to talk about, because I have all of these different obsessions, and one at a time was baking. It could be Glastonbury, could be guitars, could be travel, a million things besides. I think I think we're fortunate that we live in a day. Do you know what? Actually, I think we are privileged, and we need to check our privilege, as they say, because the biggest problem sometimes that me and you have is that we can't be asked to do something. But we have the equipment, we have the ability, we have the know-how, the connections. We've got the internet connection, we've got cameras, we've got the microphones, we've got the... Now, for how many decades of our lives would we have blamed our lack of output on the absence of those things? Not having the skill, the equipment, the internet connection, the channel, the online presence. Now we've got all of those, and the biggest problem we've got is, I can't be arsed. And it's like, well, actually, Christ, for how much of human... we live in a particularly unique time in human history where we can talk to the world without being celebrities or politicians. That did not happen to people like me, or yourself, or most of everyone I know. You could get super, super lucky, go to a stage school, or somehow become a politician and get one of the ones that got voted up, and you'd have to be a really success. Now, some days I can make videos that more people watch those than watch BBC Two in an evening. And like humans do, we find a reason not to do it.
Of course we do.
And that kills me. And so this is why I try not to spend too much time on talking myself out of things, or thinking, what will someone think, or someone will dislike my post, or they'll comment saying they don't like it, because absolutely no one has ever sat on their deathbed saying, well, at least I really cared about what everyone else thought. Didn't they?
Completely.
So I think following your passions, dancing to your own tune. I'm not entirely sure what shape or form that's going to take, but I look forward to doing it.
That sounds really great. I think one thing that I'm trying to live by is just the realization that this isn't a dress rehearsal.
Right.
And we only get one go, and life is really precious. And
it is.
You've got to do something with it. So you've got to decide what you want to do and make that happen. No one else is going to do that for you, and you're responsible for your own destiny. So,
and we've all known people that have had them cut short or limited in some way, and those people didn't get notice.
Yeah.
They didn't get a countdown.
No. And so I think that's a really interesting thing, and it'd be fun to watch you and see where you get to, and see how you get on with your content.
Well, it's weird because sometimes you feel like you're not advancing at all, and then I think actually you are, but I only really get to understand that in retrospect. Sometimes I just think, oh God, I'm just making the same videos over and over. And actually you look back and you think, well, actually, no, that's not right, because the production values went up, the timing went up, you got better with the editing. You went and did this thing in Japan, kind of. You've now got people approaching you with opportunities to do X, Y, and Z. So it does creep forwards. The biggest lesson for me has been, you don't necessarily need to be able to see the crystal ball of the next 5-year plan. This is why I hate questions about where do you see yourself in 5 years. It's like, ask me in 5 years and I'll tell you. And I don't mean to be defeatist about that, but I find I get a lot more done net if I'm just making sure that I'm just creeping forwards, just doing something all the time, and that progression comes with it.
One foot in front of the other.
Exactly that.
Definitely. Dan Thomas, it has been an absolute pleasure to speak to you today, mate.
Thank you very much, mate.
I have a small gift for you to commemorate. This is a new tradition on the podcast of 2024.
Oh, wow.
It's a little box with something in it for you. You have to open on camera.
Okay. Should I like this?
No, you can do it where you want.
Is it pickups?
No.
Oh, it is a Red Special Slate. What would you call it? BMAT?
Yeah. Coaster.
Coaster. That's
Yeah.
it.
Beer mat,
Yeah.
coaster.
I've got a wobbly table.
You can put it underneath.
Oh.
And then what does it say on the back, Dan?
Dan Thomas, 16th of July, 2024. Is it the 16th today?
It is the 16th of July.
It is indeed the 16th of July.
The day we recorded.
It's going to immediately date this video if anyone watches
Yeah.
it in the future.
In 7 years when this comes out.
Yeah. So thank you very much, mate. I really like that. I don't know what to say, but I love all your little, because you've done like coins and all sorts of little bits and pieces that I've had from you. I think I had a spanner as well at one point, and so I won't put any drinks on it because it'll be the one coaster that you want to look after to save the put things on the table instead. But I really like that. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you for agreeing to be a guest, and good luck with the next step in what you do.
Thank you very much.